You're listening to At Eye Level on the Big Papa Network. I'm Matt G, and this week we're coming to you from the studios of Zero Control Records in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We'll get to know the owners, Jake and Misty, who'll teach us a little bit about their unique recording process and how your band can benefit from it. They'll also talk about their involvement with the local music scene here in Southern Colorado. We're not live, so you don't have to call in. At Eye Level from Zero Control Records on the Big Papa Network. Welcome to At Eye Level on the Big Papa Network. I'm Matt G, the mad scientist behind this crazy experiment. That fat kid with glasses you knew growing up. A middle-of-the-road, middle-aged, middle-class, middle child. A never was, that could have been but isn't. A 45-year-old work in progress. So this week we've got a special treat for you. We're almost live from the studios of Zero Control Records in Colorado Springs. And I'm here with my guest, the founder of Zero Control and the mad scientist behind, well, this crazy experiment here, Jake Huerta. Jake, welcome to At Eye Level. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having us over here. It's interesting to do the show in a real, actual studio for once.
Does it sound a little better?
It does, yeah, and the acoustics are so much better too. I mean, yeah, it's great. I haven't spoken into a real microphone like this in a long time. It's kind of cool.
We have quite a few mics. I love mics.
I think I could get used to this. Maybe we'll start squatting here and do the show from here. I don't know. Maybe you never know.
If it works, it works. If it sounds right, it is right.
That's true. So, let's get the audience a little familiar with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I started doing sound, I don't know, but maybe 10 years ago. A little longer than that, actually. I got in trouble in church. I was in the church band, and I jumped off the stage. And for punishment, that they thought they'd put me on the soundboard, and I ended up just continually absorbing it. And then nothing happened with it for a while until I was in a band later on, and they were like, hey, can you make this little recording on this little 4-track? And I was like, oh, sure, let me just brush up on a few things. And it sort of opened up this floodgate for me, and I just kept learning, and it was the mic position. Oh, it was the room placement. Oh, it was the room. It was this, it was that. And, it just sort of became this obsession to create a demo for a while. And then, when we did produce it, a few people started asking, hey, can you help me? And so I kept going and building pieces. And before long, I just decided I'm going to go for it and started, collecting all the gear I could and doing research on, abstract things like mics and cables and and I just kept learning and kept going with it, and that's kind of how I got started, I suppose. Everything here is all been acquired from the ground up, from the acoustic treatment to the microphones and stands and everything like that. And it's been a long journey, to be honest with you.
Sure.
I've dumped my every last available cent into this place. So, and I guess that's
some guys, they like to golf, some guys like to collect cars, and do stuff like that. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with following your dream and at the same time helping people out, which is kind of what we're all about here. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. We try and keep it real comfortable here. I feel like you get better performances if everyone's sort of relaxed and they're not intimidated by having this mic in their face or whatever. Sure. We kind of sort of curb it for that boutique feel.
Absolutely. And it doesn't hurt either that you do this out of your home, so it's you're welcoming people into your home. It kind of puts them at ease a little bit and gets them to, I don't know, I guess it gets them to relax a little bit more because it's more of a personal connection, I suppose.
I agree, actually. I think that home studio feel is great, but most home studios can't really achieve the sound that they're looking for. So I feel like we have an edge there, a little more knowledgeable or whatever. And
that's true. So, did you ever have any kind of formal training, or is it all just kind of self-taught by, Googling and reading books and stuff like that?
100% self-taught. The only instruction I've ever really had on sound, it was, like I said, when I was in church as a kid, and so now I think about it, it was like 12 years ago. And it was just to get familiar with like preamps and,
Sure.
don't blow up the speakers.
Right.
But 99% of my knowledge is self-taught, self-read. Just, it's just something I always enjoyed. I really like wave dynamics, and harmonic theory and things like that really play into not only music theory, which kind of led me into that path, but also sound and acoustics and things like that too. So.
And I guess it's kind of encouraging for anybody out there who may want to get into this, or actually anything really, and be concerned about how am I going to learn about this, and can I afford to go to college, or things like that. But nowadays, anything you want to know is a Google search away. So,
yeah, I mean, if I had gotten into school earlier, I definitely would have benefited from it. But after so many years, when I finally started to look at schools, I found myself in a place where I was like, wow, I'm not really going to be learning much until towards the end of these programs, so I'd rather just reinvest that money that I'd spent on school in more equipment at that point.
Sure.
Instead of having a piece of paper, I'd rather have some nice monitors.
Absolutely. So as you've been building your collection over the years, do you do things like, check out garage sales and estate sales or eBay?
Oh, yeah,
or things
absolutely.
Like that?
Absolutely. Like, I've gotten some really good deals at, garage sales and stuff. Someone's like, oh, here, I kicked my son out. Take all of his DJ gear for next to nothing. And I feel sort of bad, but those are really nice cables,
One man's loss.
I suppose.
What would you say is probably one of the most interesting kind of situations where maybe the person had no idea what the value of something that they had and you picked it up at a really good deal?
Maybe the organ we got for free.
Nice.
Or I got a really nice old school tremolo amp that someone gave me for next to nothing. That's a nice expensive, LA-15, I think. Old school 60s tremolo optical circuit,
nice.
All analog. Yeah, it sounds great.
Does it have a built-in ashtray too, or?
No, I don't think that one. I think they kept the ashtray that came on it.
I was actually joking with someone at work recently. They were talking about old audio consoles and switchers and things like that, and how back in the 50s, 60s, 70s they were all made out of steel and solid.
Yeah.
You could basically I don't know, you can pretty much crush a small car with them. Now they weigh so much, and how everything had an ashtray built into it back then.
Then they figured out that the smoke was bad for the gear in the first place.
It's like, never mind the lungs, it's bad for the gear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's good for the mind, right?
Although it does help some people get a kind of a leathery, smoky kind of a voice thing going on, too.
Actually, we had one guy who I'd be like, hey, go outside and smoke half a cigarette before you do next take, because he had like sort of a verklempt thing because he was like getting to the place where he was having a cold, and I was like, it sounds awesome. I sound horrible. Go smoke another cigarette, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and I actually am one of those ones that kind of finds that smoky voice on a lady very sexy, like Emma Stone. I love that smoky voice of hers, and there were other actresses too. And I actually had a girlfriend several years ago who was a heavy smoker, and she had that smoky voice that was just kind of that voice that drives men wild.
Yeah.
But we digress. Enough about smoking. It's bad for you. Don't do it.
Right. It gives you cancer.
Yeah, cancer. Yeah, that's it. COPD, emphysema, the works. So, yeah. Don't smoke, kids. Little public service announcement brought to you by At Our Level and the Big Papa Network.
Unless you're Skrillex, I suppose. Then it's required for the creation, I think. Just smoke a pack of cigarettes and you can lay down the kick drum.
So now, most of the equipment that you have, do you put it all to use, or do you have some things that are just like your more of a collection or prized possessions rather than something that you want to use?
Used to collect, but I had to stop with that. So all of my equipment now is very usable stuff that I've hand-selected. And anything I didn't really use that often, I kind of sold or traded or whatever. Yeah, we have tons of amps and tons of synth capabilities, tons of keyboards and stuff that you can interface. We have a whole bunch of soft synths and several sets of drum mics, tons of different mics. I I love to record acoustic instruments, drums, acoustic guitars, vocals, live amps, things like that. We also have like Ableton, and we have the full packs for those. As far as voices, drum sounds, we have tons. I have a huge drum library. Things like that you start accumulating over the years that kind of differentiates you from like the smaller studios.
Sure.
It just takes a lot of time to build up your library of extra effects and,
Right.
synth voices. And there's tons of really nice free ones out there, I recommend if you're getting into that. Most of the good, like, effects companies will have, like, freeware that you can download to try and entice you to get their stuff. But if you search around, you can build pretty large effects libraries with high-quality effects for virtually free.
So it's kind of a labor of love, basically. If you want it bad enough, you can pretty much find anything you need, and just kind of meticulously over time build something.
You can, but it does take a lot of work, especially once you start trying to achieve higher fidelities. Like, it's easy to find cheap drum samples, but it's hard to find really nice drum samples
Sure.
for free.
Sure.
And that's a huge part of your final sound is your sound selection. It's like maybe 70% of your mix right there is your source tone.
Sure. Yeah, we've come a long way from the days of, just going down to Radio Shack and picking up any old microphone we can afford. And it's like back when we got started back in the day, we call ourselves the OGs of podcasting. And that's how we got started back in the mid to late 80s, was just a Radio Shack microphone and a mixer plugged into a boombox, recorded onto any old cheap cassette tape we could find that didn't have something already recorded on it. So yeah,
Trying
we've
to
definitely
splice it from other tapes.
Oh yeah. So yeah, it's the technology has really come a long way, and that's one of the things I like the most about kind of what we do and what we're able to do is just it's. I've said it before on the show a few times. It's democratizing the process, so it makes it available for more people. And then here we are on the internet, and just by virtue of plugging in and uploading an audio file, the whole world can listen to this. So
Right.
it's a beautiful thing, and we kind of like it. And
Well, don't get me wrong. I've gotten some good crap out of like Radio Shack before. Like every once in a while, you just find this cheap mic, and you're like, "Why does it sound good?" Oh well, doesn't matter. It sounds good.
Sure.
Like I have a nice stage dynamic that I got for like $15 at Radio Shack, and I've had it for like 8 years, and you can abuse the crap out of it. And I've had bands throw it on the stage, and it's fine. Just keeps ticking.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess every once in a while it's not so bad.
Not too bad.
So we weren't doing everything wrong back then.
Yeah. Another benefit of having an organized studio is the availability of like studio musicians. I have a small pool that I've been collecting over the years of numbers and, all kinds of strange instruments of people that, they just can't find a project for a whole lot of accordion work
Right.
or, a double bass or something. But every once in a while you have an artist, they're like, "Do you know an accordion player?" "Yes, I do." "You know a slide player?" "Guess what? I do."
Wow.
And
So what other kind of interesting music acts have you come across, or musicians? Ukulele players, kazoo players?
Kazoo player. I think I know a guy that still does kazoo, harmonicas. A lot of it is vocalists, actually. A lot of vocalists that can't find projects to get plugged into. So yeah, I have a couple of small choirs that I've been building, and I rotate players out for various projects. And it's a great way to sort of get your voice out there and get people in the music community to know about you. "Oh, hey, you remember that chick? She was like the tenor or something in this choir we did for a project." And that's how it happens for a lot of musicians.
Sure. I'd imagine in this area there's guitar players are not in any kind of short supply. There's got to be one on every street corner pretty much.
There's lots of guitar players, but there aren't a lot of talented guitar players, and I kind of feel that way about many genres of music. And a lot of people ask me, like, "How do you feel about like dubstep as an engineer?" And it's like, well, I kind of feel the way I feel about most music in general. It's like, yeah, there's lots of crap, and there's lots of crap punk, and there's lots of crap everything. But there's also these gems that you'll find, and you're like, how the hell did you make that? It's incredible work, So yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it,
Hot, crispy, creamy, delicious. Italian cuisine from the ovens of Brooklyn, right here in Southern California.
Valentino's Pizza offers Brooklyn-style pizza, calzones, homemade meatballs, and lasagna, pasta, sausage rolls, sandwiches, salads, and for dessert, try our spumoni and delicious homemade cannoli. And don't forget our fresh homemade bread, baked daily, so tempting you will think you're walking through the streets of Brooklyn.
You won't be far from authentic Brooklyn cuisine at Valentino's Pizza, located at 975 Aviation Boulevard in Manhattan Beach and 150 South Sepulveda in El Segundo.
For hot, fresh delivery, call Manhattan Beach at 310-318-5959 or El Segundo at 310-426-9494 or visit our website at valentinospizza.net.
Valentino's Pizza, bringing you the heart of Brooklyn one slice at a time.
So, let's imagine a scenario, if you will. Let's say I'm, a musician and I want to get started, and I come down and, I find you. What would I expect as part of the process down here?
Well, it really depends on your vision, and I usually try and, curb my work based on, what the artist is looking to do, and also on their level of knowledge. Most people don't really understand exactly what they're looking for, and so usually I start out by, listening to their work and listening to reference examples. This is how I want my guitars to sound. This is how I want my voice to sound. And so I usually try and start with pre-production, which I feel is extremely overshadowed in especially the music industry, is people just want to jump right in. And you're figuring out all these problems on the fly, like, oh, what's the tempo? Well, I don't know. Well, come out of the booth and let's figure out the tempo. Oh, wait, you get to the bridge. I forgot there's a tempo change right there, things like that could easily be avoided by just talking about it. So I sit down and we start breaking their songs down. What's your BPM? Are there tempo changes, time changes, Are you looking for a specific idea from the get-go? Because the better vision I have of what the artist wants, the better vision, the faster and more precise I can act. Because, if I'll make the guitar sound good, oh my, like how many different ways are there to record a guitar? And without an overview of how that's going to fit in with the other instruments, I don't know how to generally approach that, So I find that the number one thing that gets missed is pre-production. So that's what you could definitely expect is free pre-production from us. We want to find out exactly what you want so that when you're stepping behind the mics, you're ready for it.
Sure. I'd imagine that a lot of people come in just, not really having much of an idea as to the process itself. And they're just like, well, I'm a pretty good singer and I'm a pretty good musician, so I want to record something. And they think that it's, sit down and just start recording and really don't know. So it's good that you can kind of take them by the hand and explain to them,
yeah,
hey, this is a process and this is how it goes. And have you ever, I know this has happened to me in video production a lot, is you get someone where they show you an example of something and they're like, I want something like this, but not exactly.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, could you be a little more vague?
Yeah. And that's why I try and use multiple reference, examples. I suppose after pre-production, you could expect to record, and we'll set up your sound, and that would be the next step. And I guess that's technically sort of pre-production too, is finding out how you want to record, choosing mics and choosing placement for your objects and things like that. And then we'll probably do a couple of test records, and figure it out and move the mic and nudge it here and change that level or whatever we got to do. And then we'll start layering takes, Usually I start off with scratch, and they just run through it and just lay it down. And sometimes that scratch track is epic, and sometimes you're like, okay, well, we're going to try and do this now, and having a reference point, from their own work, and then you start layering the takes. And I like to, at each stage, sort of edit between the takes, because otherwise you end up with this huge pool of all these takes, and so you go, oh man, well maybe I should edit this, and then you have to edit that, to make it work with, the other piece that you just cut. And so I find it's better to just get it the way you want as you go through. And it seems more time consuming, but in my experience, it actually saves a lot of time in the long run.
Yeah, the old myth of we'll fix it in post.
Right.
Basically, you kind of undo that because there's not much to fix at that point. I want to kind of back up and drill down a little bit too, like how you were talking earlier about setting up the equipment for the specific sound. I think a lot of people don't really understand or appreciate what's involved in that, and just kind of take for granted the process. They think, well, here's my speaker, here's my mic, just drop it in front of here. Could you kind of go into it a little bit for the novice or the newbie who doesn't quite understand, how even just moving something an inch to the left or the right or further back or further, closer in can really make a difference?
Well, I mean, yeah, it can really make a huge difference. I mean, first thing you should consider is, when you're dealing with a mic is how big that diaphragm is. And so when you consider that you're dealing with something the size of a quarter, a half an inch is like huge as far as the pickup pattern. And that's the second thing is you start thinking about the actual physics of the objects you're working with. Like mics have a pickup pattern and they'll also have a gradient along that pickup pattern. So like 90 degrees to the diaphragm, for instance, you might call that 0 degrees. And as you move to one side or the other, it'll slowly change your frequencies that are being picked up. So that's usually where I start is, and another thing to keep in mind is every mic just sounds different. They have different what they call the frequency response. So you can take the same sound into one mic and it will not sound the same as another mic, even at the same distance and angle because of its frequency response. So you got to kind of, it's sort of choosing a color palette, if you will. And then the speaker sort of behaves in the same way. It also has a sort of polar pattern to it, and that will change the frequencies as well. So you end up dealing in multiple sort of spectrums, and so it really is sort of like choosing a color palette to work from. Distance, the proximity effect, for instance, as you get within a certain range, usually within a foot to 6 inches of a microphone, it'll start picking up even more and more and more bass frequencies, which a lot of people love to use for miking, sound all sexy in the mic, and you really catch that breath, and it feels like you're listening to the back of their throat, So that's usually where I start is, I'll kind of move around the object, the amp or the guitar or whatever, and kind of just listen to it, plug one of my ears and just sort of listen and hear what I hear because every angle, and then from there you start figuring out your bouncing in your room, how much reverb you want coming back into your mic, Well, a lot of drummers, for instance, really like a live sort of roomy sound to their mic. Especially on the overheads. And so sometimes I'll even go further and add even more microphones to add that to the balance, what they call room miking or far miking, things like that.
Sure. So, and it's interesting because, a lot of people don't realize that, that there is a science behind it. And it's,
absolutely.
There's physics involved, probably mostly physics, but, pure mathematics as well. It's actually, I remember hearing a PSA a number of years ago. They were talking about something about music. I forget originally the thing, but the way it sums up is somebody goes, so basically music is math that you can listen to.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Because it kind of, you figure time signatures and beats and measures and all that stuff.
I'm going to have my web guy tweet that on my Twitter.
There you go. Credit me, though.
Absolutely.
I actually kind of like that. Music is math that you can listen to.
Yeah, that's got me thinking, just sitting there like, that just personifies the whole thing, doesn't it?
So in actuality, musicians are nerds.
Yes.
They're math nerds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the theory behind music is all math-based too, and the physics of, the frequencies, that's all math, and the transduction, from the microphones and the equipment, saturation, harmonics, all that, all physics, all math. Yeah, that's great.
See, so fret not, my nerds. There is a future in music for you.
Yeah, I was a nerd in school too. I didn't really have too many friends, and I was too antisocial to play chess with the chess club kids, but I would still play chess with them at like lunch or whatever. I just wasn't part of the chess club.
Sure. Nothing wrong with
It's
being
just-
your own man. It's quite all right.
You kind of have to be, it takes so much time and practice and effort. That's the other thing about, sound, a lot of people don't realize is it takes practice. I've made countless awful recordings,
Sure.
And every once in a while you stumble upon that trick. And you're like, oh, I have to use that from now on,
That aha moment, as it were.
You
or
find
light
that
bulb
spot in
moment,
the room. You find that one mic that works with that speaker just right. And,
They don't call it the sweet spot for nothing, that's for sure.
Right?
So-
insert a sound effect right there.
Oh, I have a feeling what sound effects are going to get inserted.
Boing.
So,
So yeah, we do studio musicians. We do audiobooks. I've had a musician a guy that came in and he laid down several stories from his travels in Thailand and
cool.
and India and stuff, and it was all about yoga philosophy and psychology and
Cool. Is that one of the more interesting types of projects you've worked on? Or?
actually, yeah, I really enjoyed working with that guy. His name is Ralph Matson. It's available for download on my website. He insisted that anyone that could listen to it download it. And
Cool.
so,
And hey, since you mention it, why not give your website address?
all right, it's zerocontrolrecords.com.
Cool. We'll mention that a few more times throughout.
All right.
but,
Yeah. Zero
just get
Control
started,
Records. It's like zero on an EQ, but also like zero control over your music,
That's where it comes from?
Yeah.
Cool. So what were some of the first projects that you got involved with?
The very first project, like I said, was my band. We were called Trashbox, and it wasn't a very good project, but it actually got me, moving as far as recording. And then after that, I did another project with another band I was in called Obsidian Rose. And around the same time, that's when I started to pick up a few artists. I worked with this guy, Bill W., and him
From
and
Alcoholics
Misty.
Anonymous?
No, that's his stage name, Bill W. And he does like country folk. We did a John Denver tribute album, and then we did some originals. And in the middle of recording his originals, we ended up stopping mid-production and doing a project for the Cultural Center of the Pikes Peak region. And that was a really fun project. And we ended up beating out like a couple hundred studios for our slot on that disc, and
Nice.
it went national. Actually, it was like 35 on the folk charts that year or something.
Very cool.
Not super impressive, but it was an outstanding moment for our studio.
Hey, I don't know anybody else with a number 35 in the folk charts, so there
Right.
you go.
It was part of a compilation. They were all John Denver covers, and we raised a bunch of money to help kids learn how to paint. Bob Dylan himself even said he liked my mix, actually.
Nice.
So that was pretty cool.
That's like one of the ultimate compliments.
Right? Yeah, I got back down through the chain or whatever that Bob Dylan liked it.
Very cool.
Sounds
That's
like sweet.
royalty coming down and dubbing you as a knight of the recording process.
It is acceptable.
It was really good. I like the mix.
But yeah, I think that track will actually be on my site as well. The site's currently under renovation, but it should be up very soon. So
I understand. Mine's been under renovation for about 2 years, so.
bummer. Web guys are kind of like artists.
Yeah, you could say that. But here's a time where I will shamelessly self-promote and request if there are any web designers out there willing to donate their services to the Big Papa Network, please contact us, feedback@bigpapaonline.com.
I actually know a guy. We'll talk after the show.
Cool. I'm always looking for, we're always looking for people who can pretty much do any type of a thing. I mean, we're middle-class activists, small business advocates. We always try to look for, people who are doing what you're doing here, following their passion and just trying to help other people follow theirs. So,
Hey, that's great because I try and support small businesses too. I buy a lot of my equipment from Music Central. He's a local business, and Pro Sound actually moved their shop in front of his to try and push him out, but I refuse to go in there anymore. And Music Central, awesome Lutherie. He does like guitar work, pretty much any acoustic instrument he can work on, and like that. That's his main thing. Is like anytime I need a guitar fixed up, right to Music Central, Bill.
Nice. And I'm sure he appreciates the business a lot more than any of the bigger places will, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And he remembers you, and he'll give you deals if you bring him more clients, you know.
It's a good
Hint, Bill W.
I think that's Academy Boulevard right here in the Springs. Is that the...
Yep, Academy and Maisland for him. And let's see, what else do? We do jingles. So after I started working with Bill W., kind of led down this slope because his wife had a coffee shop, so we did a little commercial for her. But unfortunately, they closed right before the commercial aired.
Wow.
But it sort of opened this sort of slippery slope, and I started getting more into post-production, Foley, sound effects, jingles. I have one of my main studio musicians, Misty. She is excellent and lay down sound beds like no tomorrow, and that's another thing that we offer is
cool.
Video work, synced of it, post work, sweetening, things like that.
So we'll be working together a lot in the future then, basically, is what you're saying.
That would be great. I think it's beneficial for both of us.
Absolutely.
I'll help you build up your studio a little bit more. Maybe come in sometime and say, hey, maybe move the mic this way.
Exactly, yeah. Show me how it's really supposed to be set up. Because right now it's still just the spare bedroom in the house.
If it sounds good, it sounds good, and that's what's most important.
That's true. It's just, like I said, it's still just the spare bedroom in the house that's got unpacked boxes in it and whatnot. But it'll get there eventually. It's going to look real nice. But hopefully by the time we're ready to do a live video feed, it'll actually look like something presentable. So
yeah, one of my sound guy heroes said, "No one bobs their head to the dials. No one bobs their head to the gear you used. Mm-hmm. No one cares what the mic looked like. They only care if it sounds good."
That's true. And we're a lot about like the message too. As long as you can hear it reasonably.
Yeah,
we're just getting it out there, so it's a good thing, I guess. But you can always there's always room for improvement, and
absolutely.
Just because we are set up in a little spare bedroom in a house somewhere in Colorado Springs doesn't mean it has to sound that way. So
right. And, it might be something as simple as moving your couch and
Sure.
paying attention to the polar pattern of your mic and where's the, first thing I would point to is, where are your reflection points and where's the pickup pattern on your mic, you know what I mean? So
maybe one day we'll put together a tutorial for anybody else who wants to do what we're doing. And,
that is something else. I've recently started a small tutorial series. It's actually a 2-part series. One part is... a sort of how-to, like things like how do you mic an amp, how do you mic an acoustic guitar, how do I compress a signal or EQ my amp or small things like that. And the goal of that series is by the time you get to the end of it, you should be able to basically set up your band for a live show or do a basic small demo recording with some nominal gear. And then the other part of the series is linking it in with artists that I'm working with. We'll be doing interviews similar to this, with, I'm working with a few different artists right now, and Children of the Fall and Rescue at Sea, and let's see, a few other projects. And
do we have any clips we can play for our audience to listen to?
For Rescue at Sea, I don't know. I'll have to ask him, but I do have some clips of some of my work that I'll play for you.
Well, let's listen to one right now, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more. What do you say?
Alrighty. Feel
green shadows and the stars appear. There is no one to dry your tears. I could hold you for 1,000,000 years to make you feel my love. I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but I could never do you wrong. I've known it from the moment that we met. There's no doubt in my mind where you belong. I go hungry, I go black and blue. I go crawling down the avenue. There ain't nothing I wouldn't do. Make you feel my love. Storms are raging on the open seas, and on the highway of regret. Winds of change are blowing wild and free. You ain't seen nothing like me yet.
I could make you happy, make your dreams come true. There ain't nothing I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you,
To make you feel my love. To make you feel my love.
Well, we're back. So, what was that we just listened to?
Well, what we just heard was a clip from that show that we did with the Pikes Peak Cultural Center, featuring Bill W. and Misty Walker, called The Heroes. And, yeah, they sound amazing. Excellent performance, I think.
Definitely. Thank you for listening to the Big Papa Network on Blog Talk Radio. The Big Papa Network is also available on iTunes. Search the iTunes store for Big Papa Online, and you'll be able to download past episodes of At Eye Level and Third Eye Cinema. Listen to them on your own time, and never miss a moment of these great shows. You can also get there from our website, BigPapaOnline.com, where you'll find everything there is to know about us and our mission. It's all in there. Go to BigPapaOnline.com right now and you'll find it. Thanks. So let's get a little bit more into the process. We touched on the pre-production process, but so now let's move on into that stage of the process, the actual production. What can, again, I'm Joe, musician, and I just figured it out. So now what can we expect?
Well, we got your tempo tracks down. Usually I like to layer record, meaning start with like percussion usually, and we'll go to a click track, which is a metronome in your headphones, so that there's no arguments. I found click tracks are great not only for keeping the timing square, but also eliminating arguments between the band as to who's off, because the clock doesn't lie.
Right.
So usually I like to start with things that are going to be the sort of sound bed, usually percussion, like drums, and usually bass or like keys or something like that. The sort of frequency foundation for the record, the sound bed, if you will, and then I'll start, layering from there. And at each stage, we'll, take several takes and then edit between the takes to make them all square and get all the fades right and everything. And that way, when you process, it sounds a lot cleaner, in my opinion.
Sure.
And then, I'll start layering on your sort of rhythm instruments, your guitars, other keyboard tracks, whatever other crazy instruments you have, like violins. and strings are becoming much more popular these days too, I've found. And then, I usually reserve vocals for last, because I found the vocalists generally use the music as a sort of feel thing. So trying to get the track as, relatively close to where it's going to be at seems to help a lot. I'm not saying that, vocalists are particularly difficult to deal with, but sometimes they can be, But I found that just, sort of having a sort of foundation to build from helps a lot, especially when you're dealing with melodic inflections like vocals or solos or, things like that. So that's the basic approach that I generally take, but it usually depends on the recording too. I've worked with a couple of bands and they want to record with everybody at once, all in the same room. And, there's benefits to that. The sound will sound different, but not necessarily bad. Like, a lot of people love that sound, where everyone's playing together, or try and get, like, the core group of the instruments all playing together, like the drums and the bass and the guitars, But there's also a detriment to that, and that's everyone has to nail it perfectly.
Right.
And you might be able to edit between takes of, the whole group, but it might not always cut as easily, I found.
Sure. It's easier to, that guitar is messed up. Let's go re-record that guitar part versus, okay, everybody back to one and let's do it again. And,
right. And, it takes a lot more pre-production to do that too, because you have to set up and test everybody. So, you're going guitar, bass, and especially drums. Drums are really susceptible to phase cancellation and crossbleed and things like that end up making it a little kind of blurry or muddy, so that's a huge struggle, but also, a totally different style capture, I suppose. But generally, I like to layer record. I find, you get more pleasing results. It's easier on everybody, because you lay down your drums in a weekend, and then, the bass player's got work. So maybe on Wednesday he can come in, and then,
Sure.
on Thursday the guitarist can come in. And so there's benefits to doing layering also, in my opinion, as far as scheduling goes.
So do you find that the lesser experienced bands tend to want to do it where they're all together at once, or
yeah, strangely, I have encountered that more often than not. Is you have, especially with the younger groups, people in or out of high school, and because they practice so much together that's how they play together. So, it's hard for them to hear it in their headphones and just play it. It's much easier to look for that glance on the drummer and the weird thing that the bass player does with his head every other bar,
But you break them of that eventually, though, right?
I try to offer suggestions. Like I said, it's zero control. So, if that's the way we're going to record, then that's the way we should record. But
Sure.
I just try and offer the benefit of the sound, because that's kind of where my perspective comes from. Is, your sound will be slightly different if you do it that way. And so it's just something to keep in mind.
Right. But the good thing is that you're pretty much set up to be able to do it either way. So
yeah, and we're
always
actually
accommodate.
fixing to expand our studio here in the next few months. We're going to be going up to 32 inputs and outputs, which is superb. And we're going to be, all of those inputs and outputs will be at 192 kilohertz, which is
I was going to say, for the layman.
Ultra HD, if you will, 4K or whatever. Insanely high sampling rate. So,
What's the biggest group you've had down here? How the most number of musicians at once?
probably this group called Bad Maps. There's this other group that I had named Foster. They had quite a few members. I think they had 5, but it's not just them. It's all their friends and their groupies and stuff
the
too. So it
entourage,
ends up
yeah.
getting packed. Yeah, I would say probably Foster is the biggest group. Generally not, you find 4 or 5 musicians at once. I've never tried to record like Slipknot style groups yet. Although that would be a fun challenge. Record like 9,000 guitarists and all that. That'd be kind of fun actually. Try and squeeze all those into the mix.
On the flip side, have you had where it's one musician and he wants to play everything? And
Yeah, actually, I have done several projects that way. Lots of musicians that are multi-talented, they come in, they do every layer themselves. It's kind of impressive, actually, when you have a really good musician that can do something like that. Bill W. did a lot of his work. It was just him and his son on drums, and then Misty did a lot of their backing stuff, like their string sections and their keyboard work and some of the backup vocals. But mostly like the bass and all the guitars and stuff, that was all Bill, and all the vocal stuff, mostly Bill, except for the choirs.
Very cool. Now, I know this is probably, I don't know, some would consider it controversial, but have you ever had to, there's a situation where you've got a band in here and one of the musicians, bassist, guitarist, keyboard, just isn't getting it and you've had to substitute a studio musician?
No, I actually have not run into that, but I have had situations where the musician can't perform completely correct, and like I've had situations where I had this keyboardist one time, and the guy that wrote the songs just gave him the sheet music. It was like, play this. And so he had to spend like an hour in the studio practicing this line, and then when it was time to record, he was having trouble delivering because it was still new to him, and it was kind of chaotic, actually. I have run into situations like that. You just try and do the best you can. It's something to remember that, it's a process, and, it takes time. So maybe, have an off day and come back next time and try again, and you never know, there could be that one moment, everyone's tired from a 14-hour day, and just like, oh, can we just be done? Oh, one more take, okay. And you hit the button, and whatever comes out of that amp is just like magic. And you're like, oh my God. And so sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but,
Sure.
That's why it's an art, I suppose.
That's true. That's very true. And I suppose, have you do you find that you kind of tap into your resources of backup musicians and things quite often? Like, for example, back in the day, the 50s, there was the term the Hey Johnny girls.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bring them in occasionally?
I do, actually. I have a really nice female choir on retainer, and it's not as frequent as I would like to, actually. I really like to get more people involved with the music. I feel like it takes new directions and evolves, but a lot of the times the artist is like, no, this is the way I want it, and, they just want it the way they want it, and that's fine, so I would say not as often as I would hope, a lot of artists are very particular, and they know exactly what they want, and that's great, but it doesn't open the door to bringing in a lot of other musicians most of the time.
Sure. Now, do you find it more that they kind of are very possessive and territorial, or is it sort of a mix, or,
It's, it's 50-50. Musicians come in all kinds of shapes and sizes, from completely, aggressive about what they want, and some are completely lost, and they just say whatever sounds good, and it's sort of a 50-50. Some of them are very much perfectionists, and I too am a perfectionist. I'm totally guilty of that, but something else I've had to learn about the last few years is that perfectionism only gets you so far before it becomes sort of a detriment to the work, and letting it be sort of organic and on the spot sometimes yields the best results.
I've always had this philosophy that perfection in its very essence is artificial because of everything that you have to kind of go through, to make something quote unquote perfect. You're taking away its authenticity. It's, to quote Lao Tzu, the wabi-sabi of it, basically. Sometimes just, leaving something being organic and natural and just letting it flow without trying to tweak it is probably winds up being better in most cases.
I mean, some of the most famous recordings have been on the spot or in completely untreated rooms, for some reason, this Nirvana track comes to mind, and he couldn't get the guitar part right, and, so he's sitting in the control room, and he's like, man, it should just be kind of like this. And so the engineer said, don't move, and just ran and grabbed a mic and put it up in front of the guitar and said, okay. And that ended up being the print track, actually.
Cool.
think it's the guitar from Dumb.
Happy accidents. It's always fun when that happens. I actually remember hearing a story about when the Stones were recording Jumpin' Jack Flash. The intro part, the intro guitar part, Keith Richards basically just recorded it into a simple little cassette player and turned the volume way up, and that's how they were able to get the sound. And it's pretty interesting how they achieve that kind of stuff. Whereas nowadays you just plug it into Pro Tools and apply a filter and stuff.
Yeah, or put a tape saturation mod. There's plugins that emulate different kinds of tape, and then some of them go to the extent of like, what brand of tape from what year would you like to put on your audio? It's crazy. Yeah.
Now, have you worked with tape, doing it quote unquote old school, or like guys
I
like
want
me?
to more. We do have a little reel to reel, and mostly right now we use it for lo-fi effects, like recording the organ onto it and then convert that to digital. It gives it a nice little grit and those strange harmonics that only tape can make. And like a lot of the emulators sound great, but I agree with you. There's something about that original equipment, and like same thing with amp M's, and pedal M's. Like so many guitars are switching to digital, and I just sometimes it sounds great for the piece, and sometimes digital sounds great, and sometimes analog sounds great, and it really depends on what you're going for and knowing what you want,
Sure. And it's actually even almost heartening or encouraging, or I don't know, brings a tear to my eye when you see that more and more people are, recording on making actual albums, and that turntables have made a huge comeback, and that CDs
really
have become a
excited.
thing of the past now. I remember seeing one of those like How It's Made specials on TV for a record pressing factory, and they're
Pretty
like, well,
impressive stuff.
10 years ago, people were saying, "Oh, you're still making records," and now people are saying, "Oh, you're still making CDs."
Right.
It's kind of good to see a lot of that stuff come back. I mean, unfortunately, some of it's kind of ironic, and it's more of a just kind of a "ooh, I'm cool, I'm doing retro stuff because I'm a hipster." But
Right.
On the flip side, it's good to know that there's still an appreciation for a lot of that old technology, because
Absolutely.
my dad always used to say the old ways are always the best, and sometimes he's right. And that's why more and more I start to see more and more people using tube amps and things like that. And,
Yeah. Oh, I got a few tube amps in my studio myself. There's nothing like a good tube crunch, man. And even the clean tubes, there's that minor, tiny bit of distortion that your ear can hear, and there is something different about it,
Sure. I remember recording a CD onto an 8-track once. That was a pretty interesting. I don't know. I think 8-tracks predate you, don't they?
I have an 8-track player actually right there.
Really?
Yeah, I actually have two 8-track players. I was sampling from them for a piece, and I don't know if we're going to use it or not, but
Yeah, that was interesting technology. The 8-track itself.
and you can't fake that warble, that wow and that flutter and those little, having a little dent on that one part of the roller that comes by the tape every so often.
Or if you don't time it right, the track switches in the middle of the song. And
Right. It makes that huge click.
That's always fun, yeah.
Digital's going far, man. They're getting really close to analog, I think.
It is, but getting back to like what I was saying before about how the whole artificial perfection kind of a thing. It's great that you can achieve that now with digital, but there's still something that can be said about that original. There's just, like you said, there's that feel. There's that, those little warbles and crunches and hums and buzzes and tape hiss and stuff that just kind of adds to the whole thing.
Yeah, now we have plugins to add it back because it's too clean.
I know. They worked so hard to clean it up, and now it's just like, I'll never forget when I got my first CD that had the DDD on it, digital recording, digital master, and digital. It was like, oh, wow, that sounds so clean. I hate it.
Yeah, those early digital recordings they were really trying to like make it super clean too, and so everything ended up sounding like almost artificial, like it was pasted there or something.
Yep, and that's actually I see that a lot in film and video now too. It's like everything had to be like so crisp and clean, and now you've got the Robert Rodriguez's who are intentionally putting scratches and things on there, giving it that film look and stuff. And
The cameras are picking up every little blackhead on their face now.
Yep, but Super 8's making a comeback though, so hey, you never know.
Yeah. I am excited about analog making a comeback, though. There's a new push in the audio world to bring back things like dynamic range, and they're trying to get control over the mastering loudness standards so that we don't have all this insanely compressed garbage, blasting our ears and making us deaf. Like, more and more people are coming back to that sort of organic, sort of natural spikes in the sound, natural inflections, and problems with the equipment and all that sort of thing. And yeah, it's nice to see people coming back to a more organic approach to music.
Sure. It's just like we're doing with food.
Mm-hmm.
Getting away from all the processing and the engineering and all that other stuff. And just
Yeah, exactly.
remembering the purity of it. And I mean, I guess I kind of sound like I'm all like, waxing philosophical like some old man missing the old days. But, sometimes
it's
my father
truth,
was
though.
right. It was just better back then.
Yeah.
So it's good. It does warm my heart to see it coming back, though. I don't know if it's just a sense of, old manism or anything like that. But I think that overall it respects the whole art form, really, and the music itself, because I think the sound is just as important, to the process as, the music and the lyrics and everything like that. It's all part
Absolutely.
of the...
It's a little more subliminal, too, but I agree with you. But at the end of the day, it is always about the performance. Like,
True.
If I have some slightly grainy audio, but the performance is stellar, I'll find a way to work with it.
Sure, absolutely. It's I've always felt it as music is more of a visceral experience. It's not just something that you're listening to. It's something that you really kind of experience with your whole body, basically. And when you start tapping your foot and dancing and stuff and whatnot, and sure, but it's just like I said, it's visceral. It just kind of gets at me deep down.
To me, it's like a psychic connection because you're dealing in transduction at every step of the way. Like the artist, 99% of the time, they'll say, "I felt it like this,"
right, and
they can't explain why they wanted to do it that way. They just felt it, and that feeling just translates down, to the muscle movement, to the, the thought and everything, and the same thing, once it translates into the air, it gets retranslated back to electrical signal, and then eventually transferred to the air again, and then that transfers into your brain, and it makes you feel something, and you can't explain why you feel it, it's almost like a psychic connection, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah, I actually do feel that a lot with certain music too. It just kind of really just I hate to use the expression "it speaks to me," but sometimes it just does. Yeah,
yeah. It's a spiritual thing for many people that are into music. Actually,
True. Well, speaking of that, what are some of your early influences musically? What did you find yourself listening to when you were a kid?
Ooh, when I was a kid, I started to get into like the classic rock stuff, I grew up kind of sheltered.
Define classic rock. Don't make me feel too old here.
Okay. Well, see, I was raised in a very sheltered, so I wasn't actually exposed to a lot of music until I was like 17, 18. But I liked all the classic. Floyd is one of my hugest influences. Alan Parsons is a magnificent genius sent to the sound community just so that we have something to aspire to, because Alan Parsons is probably my hugest influence. Dave Pinsato, I love his work. As far as the music, when I was a kid, I started getting into like Zeppelin, Floyd, Stones, that sort of classic rock sort of feel thing, and it sort of kind of eventually led me into blues, actually. And that was, my first secular band out of church. I was in a little blues band, and the blues guys started really opening my mind up to like what actually is music, and they kind of, there's this one guy, Jim Jacobs, he plays around town, and hopefully sometime this year I'll be getting him in my studio, actually. He's
cool.
An insanely talented blues guy, jazz guy, and his fingers can be like lightning on that fretboard sometimes, and he kind of just started pushing me into like, hey, check out jazz and start thinking about music in ways that you haven't really thought before. And as an engineer, that kind of really opened up doors for me, because it was like, wow, everything's not in your face, everything's not positioned left, right, center, and there's a lot less rules, and there's more room, and there's space, and there's all these new ideas that I hadn't really thought about as far as production. I feel like, so so I got into blues
So
but
we're
lately
talking
I've been
the early Delta blues, like Muddy Waters,
Muddy
and John Lee
Waters
Hooker,
and Robert Johnson and Howlin' Wolf. I love Howlin' Wolf.
So the
He's
real,
so real, yeah.
down-home
All
stuff, yeah.
recorded in mono, one mic, one guitar, one voice, just just his soul. And
one of those Crossroads type recordings.
yeah, exactly. And even in those recordings, you're like, man, I can't believe those people could call themselves a record label, but the emotion that they captured makes you wonder, did the engineer capture it that way to enhance the emotion of that? The answer is no. They just didn't have the technology. But, it sort of influences your choices, when you're trying to think about how do I want to record my music. And sometimes maybe I need to sum it all to mono with that one section, make it sound all like I was recording in a shitty room with a shitty mic 50 years, 80 years, 100 years ago.
Right. Necessity being the mother of invention and such. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. I've come up with tricks on the spot just because I needed to make it happen,
Sure. Well, you mentioned jazz. I mean, that's pretty much kind of what jazz is at its essence. Just not so much making it up as it go along, but just it's a free flow. It's
not making it up as you go along.
I've always likened jazz to there's I don't know the exact quote, but basically it's like learn the rules as an amateur so you can break them as a professional kind of thing.
I like that one.
So it's I've always seen jazz that way. It's like, it's usually very accomplished and quote unquote skilled musicians that, they know all the fundamentals and everything, and then they just kind of just let it fly and just let it flow and just let it happen and make it more of a organic, free-flowing, and again, visceral kind of an experience. And even though I don't like the Grateful Dead very much, that's kind of, basically what their whole thing was about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what other kind of influence? What do you feel yourself listening to nowadays? If I were to pick up your iPod, what would be on your?
I've been listening into like these newer sort of trip hop, acid jazzy kind of things. Like I've been on about 07 lately, and Portishead, and let's see, what's the name of that other group that I've been on about? I'm so bad with names, man.
It's okay. I don't know any of the contemporary music. My knowledge of pop music, I think, stopped in 1999, 2001, something like that.
Yeah, and some of the electro stuff, too. And it's not all recent, either. Like, I've been on about this group, FC Kahuna. They're actually a collab group from two different groups. Let's see what else is in there. Floyd still. Yeah,
of course. And I'm glad you, when you said classic rock, you mentioned groups like Floyd and the Stones, because then that doesn't make me feel too old, because they were classic rock when I was your age too. So
good.
I feel a lot better about that. If you were saying stuff like John Bon Jovi and it's like,
well, it did have a little rockabilly phase too.
Let's listen to something else that you've worked on now.
All right, I'll show you guys a little clip from this rap guy I just recorded. He's just 14 and. He's insanely talented, in my opinion, as far as rappers go in this town. Rappers in general, let alone 14. So, here's that track.
Yeah, boy. You already know who it is. Non Callisto. Let's get it. This is celebration. So fresh, man. I can't even believe I'm doing this. I think I might be too fresh for music. But shout out to the world, you know what I mean? This is true hip-hop, boy. Living in the mist, these diamonds all on my wrist. I don't keep it from the trap, but my music sounds like it is. This is anti-social, keeping the business strict. Rap industry don't come with no benefit. Nah, I'm doing my music that's so exclusive you can't see me. But when you see my charismatic rhymes, it's like I'm in 3D. I ain't just a kid, I dig graves, grabbing the right stone, I'm grabbing the right spade, I'm working my right wrist like I'm whipping some soda. This is music for the soul, my bowl is full of roll. Gucci was my inspiration, but he in jail that time he facing. All I'm screaming is Free Davis, when you get out I'll bet I made it. I don't pave the way for all that will be fame. I will kill the game, it will never be the same, bitch. Love on my friends and family will keep me going. Snakes in the grass, that's maintaining all my lyrical flow. Start writing. Please get better. Before you start living, please get better. Please. I noticed you always down. Please get better. You always fall back. Please let me help you get up. Get up. Please get better. Please get better. Get better, boy. Please get better. You always fall back. Please let me help you get up. All of my songs sound the same, you say? What? Well, I don't give a damn about what you think. Nah, I'm just entertaining and writing these rap songs. I beat, do smash broads. I know that it's wrong. Bang. I had a friend that used to treat me like a dog just to get a girl. Now he wants to kill himself. I ain't helping out those people. I'm a vicious savage. I don't care about no people. This the Night Callisto movie, where's the damn sequel? Where? This is me versus hip-hop, I love matches. The weapon that I need is made of metal from a magnet. Don't you mean neodymium? Pick up the pace, you living like a disgrace. And I swear to God, man, you never look in the face. Get him, got him, shot him, I'ma grab him, you gon' stop him. I'm a diplomat, boy, but I know when to stomp him. All these fake-ass metal artists tryna punk rap, I don't give a damn. Hip-hop over metal music, that's the truth, never say it. Before you start writing, please get better. Before you start living, please get better. I noticed you always down. Please get better. You always fall back. Please let me help you get up. What? Please get better. I beg of you, man. Please get better. What you doing out there? Please get better. You always fall back. Please let me help you get up. Get up, boy. You already know. Like I said, killing the game right now. Whoa.
And we're back at Eye Level on the Big Papa Network. I'm Matt G, and we are still here almost live at Zero Control Studios with Jake Huerta, and we are now joined by Jake's partner, associate, partner in crime, the brains behind the operation, Misty Walker. Hi, Misty. Welcome to Eye Level.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having us. It's a pleasure being here. So tell us a little bit about yourself, about who you are and what you do here.
Other than being Jake's partner, I also help run the studio. Usually I do a lot of the pre-production with the artists, helping them work through some of the more technical aspects so that I can translate it to Jake. And I also get water and tea and coffee and everything else around here, make munchies.
Make sure I don't forget my appointments.
Right?
Chief cook and bottle washer, is it?
Yep. Jack of all trades.
And a fantastic musician.
Speaking of fantastic musician, yes, tell us a little bit about that. What are you playing these days?
Mostly keyboards. I can do most of the background stuff that people need. Violins, I do them all electronically. Keyboards, as far as piano, if you need special effects, if you need backup vocals, I'm usually...
Are you a Hey Johnny girl?
I am kind of a Hey Johnny girl, yeah.
She's featured on several of our tracks, actually.
Yeah.
You actually heard her voice on that first track we played.
Oh, very cool. Good stuff. So what got you started in this whole venture?
Jake and I were actually introduced by a friend of ours who thought we would get along very well musically. She knew that he was a guitarist, and she knew that I was a musician, and she kind of got us together, and we've been partners in crime since. We're never separate. We play music together. Our first band was together. Our second band was together, and then now the studio.
Very cool.
We're actually working on one of her projects, too, a solo project for her.
Very cool. You know, I actually forgot to ask in the beginning, how long has Zero Control been around?
About 6 years officially now.
Yeah, about 6 years officially. We've been doing side projects for friends and stuff like that before then, but that was during the whole learning process, too. Right. So they kind of had to muddle through that with us, and
sure.
We're thankful for them for that.
That's awesome. So, what made you just decide to, to start the business and just do it, go out on your own like that? Was it just kind of naturally progress that way? Was there an aha moment when you sat down and said, "Let's do this," or what?
I think it was really when we purchased a 4-track recording machine, and Jake was the only one who could understand the instructions on how to run it. And so after a while, it was like, Jake, would you just record this instead of, just record this. And it really did kind of just become this natural progression. It became one of his passions. And we started noticing that he was more comfortable behind the console than anywhere else. And so, we just felt that it was a good idea to maybe make it official.
Cool. And it's always, of course, better working for yourself, I guess, than for someone else. Have you gone down that road? Have you, done your time in the trenches, as it were, working for other studios or musicians or anything?
Not as far as music production is concerned. I grew up doing kind of the same thing he did. I grew up singing in church and doing all that kind of stuff. And I have worked production more on the lines of what you do in the video production side of things, which, sometimes you do have to step in and work audio sometimes when the boom guy is missing or whatever, especially in independent Colorado Springs. So, I mean, as far as other than that, old bands, we recorded our own stuff on, a Tascam, a little 4-track recorder. But other than that,
don't knock those; they're great.
I know, no, they are. They are. In fact, we still have one here at the studio.
The little Fostex.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we do have a Fostex too.
Both of them, workhorses back in the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. So now, are you fortunate enough not to have what the rest of us call a day job?
I do have a day job. I do. It's sad, but true. But I love what I do. I love the visual aspect of things, and I love the audio aspect of things. So sometimes it comes in really handy because I still have connections on the video side, and sometimes they need trade work done or they need something done from the studio as far as like bed music is concerned. And so it's kind of nice for me to keep my foot in both sides of it. So
cool. How about you, Jake? Do you have a day job also, or is this your full-time gig?
Yeah, I'm trying to do this full-time, but still have to, buy cables and stuff once in a while.
Yeah.
And eat.
Yeah.
But you do have or starting to at least build a steady stream of actual paying customers. And it's not,
yeah, we've been charging the last few years, so that helped.
That's good. 'Cause, it's we all do favors in the beginning, and it's always good. But then, it's like after a while, people are like, "Oh, you helped me out before. Can you help me out again?" It's like, well, I've got this mortgage payment and electric bill and stuff.
Yeah, and that mic costs money to burn. Every time you turn it on, you're burning the diaphragm. Eventually, it'll die. But trying to get to the point where I only do this. That's my goal.
Well, you seem to be on the right track, and that's a good thing. So hopefully we can all work together and make sure that we're all doing this full time. It'd be
fantastic.
Because who wants a day job anymore anyway? I mean, come on.
Do what you love, and you'll never work another day.
Exactly. And I'm working towards that myself. I've always felt that at least for my generation, and I kind of feel bad for some of the generations coming up, because it's like I've heard a lot of people say this too. It's like we were like the last ones to really experience the potential of what was called the American dream. Where mom and dad went to work and they worked for 20, 30 years, retired, got a gold watch, and we all had a great future to look forward to. And we're the first generation that didn't do better than our parents.
That's correct.
Because, everything has pretty much changed, this whole, everybody talks about, it's the global economy nowadays. And, I think it's a lot of hooey myself, but that's just me.
It is. I mean, if you look at it on a core basis, I mean, it could hinder or it could help our plight where we're at now, because I'm in the same position you are, first generation to not do better than our parents. And, I worked in a job for 15 years that I'll never see a retirement for. I'll never see any payoff for that. So, one of the things that I look forward to as being a business owner, a home business owner, a small business owner, is maybe getting ourselves to the point where we can put away and we can do better for ourselves and we can put away for our retirement, which, I'd like to do.
Sure. And better to keep it yourself than let some Wall Street nut grab a hold of it and, mortgage it on whatever it is, derivatives and whatnot, and watch them all just disappear.
Today my
before your
spaghetti
eyes.
was in the shape of a pie, so we're going to invest in pie. Yeah, no, I don't want that.
Yeah, no, nobody. And it's sad that it's like becoming more and more that way. And it's like if we've become the dinosaurs. It's like how could you think this way? It's like, well, it's it's real simple. If I only make minimum wage, there's no way I can afford to pay rent, let alone and go out and buy all these things you're selling me.
Right.
It's like back in the 80s when all these companies are doing these mass layoffs and outsourcing jobs overseas. It's good for the economy. Oh, so those 17,000 people who just lost their jobs at Nike who can't afford those $150 sneakers now, that's good for the economy. How?
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Sure. I don't know. I'm not going to grind my axe anymore. Yeah, right. Sure. Well, that's also what we do. Is here is just to like I said in the beginning, we promote the small business and the middle class and things because basically we're the only ones that are going to save this whole thing because and not to knock them or saying it's wrong that they're doing it, but the whole Wall Street crowd, they're only concerned with maximizing profits and making as much money as possible. Not necessarily something wrong with that at the core, but the way they do it is kind of
right.
Yeah. Well, our middle class is disappearing,
Ethics are
and
disappearing too.
The middle class is what sustained this country and what made it what it was.
Absolutely.
We had a wider spread back then.
Sure.
And now you're either poor or you're part of the 1%.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not where we want to be.
It's like, sure, somebody can be a multi-billionaire, but they can only buy, so many toasters and vacuum cleaners and, things that, everyday people need. And it's not going to, I'd rather have 1 million people spending $5 than one person spending 5 million.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah, bring it back home. That's pretty much our philosophy. That's why we buy everything local. That's why we work with local artists. And it's not that we wouldn't work with artists that came from another state or another country, but
there's plenty right here that
there's plenty
so
right
many
here.
good musicians in this town,
mm-hmm.
and it's unfortunate because it seems like the sort of live scene has been dead for the last few years, and so there's all these amazing artists out there that no one has heard of yet.
Sure.
And we're going to change that.
And I think that's another thing too. That's kind of like the double-edged sword of the instant celebrity, I guess you could say, of the current internet age is that anybody can put their work out there, but nowadays you look at sites like Kickstarter, which is a great concept. The whole crowdfunding in general, kind of again democratizes the ability to raise funds and stuff. But now it's like I see people who are trying to raise funds to do something that's been like their life's work. It's like, I want to make this documentary, I want to make this album, and they can't get $50, but some idiot in God knows where wants to make a chicken salad sandwich and he gets $50,000 to do it. It's like,
yeah,
let's reinvent what's already been reinvented. That's really bright.
Yeah, I've seen Kickstarter pages where they say, "I'm not doing anything. Give me money so that I can continue to do this."
It's that's now become the American dream, I think, and I it's sad because people don't want to work for things. We have run into people before that are like, "What do you mean it's going to take me like 30 hours to record an album?" And it's like, well, we don't know exactly how long it's going to take for you to record your album, but we're going off of averages, and if you want it to sound good,
sure,
then we're going to do what we need to do to make it sound good. When you leave the studio, we want you to have a product that you're happy with, but also that we can say we're happy with, too, sending you away with it. And I don't think people give enough credence to the time it takes to be an artist on either side. I know video production is the same way as it is music production. It doesn't take 3 days to film a feature-length film. Mm-hmm. It takes a month.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah.
And everyone knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And so, you wouldn't go to your doctor and be like, "Hey, can you operate on me for free?" You know, he's an artist too. You know, like,
Yeah.
and
Can
so
you help me build my deck? You know,
yeah, it's just I don't know. I digress.
That's okay. We're on the same page, believe me.
but yeah,
I actually saw a meme going around not too long ago. I should post it on the Facebook page a little bit later. It's if other professions were paid like artists, and they had like doctors and mechanics and stuff.
Oh yeah, I saw that one. Yeah, that one's perfect. But
I mean, it is. It's like being a contractor, a construction worker. I mean, you're building it from the ground up, and you know, you could have a slum house, or you can have a posh mansion, or you can build a modest, you know, mid-level house. You know,
I remember actually I was watching I forget what, I think it was Bernie Mac show, and they were doing an addition on the house, and the contractor said that there's the triangle of construction. You can have 2 out of the 3 sides, but not all 3. You can have good, and you can have fast, and you have cheap. And you can have 2 of those, but not all 3. In other words, if it's going to be good and fast, it's not going to be cheap.
Right.
If it's going to be good and cheap, it's not going to be fast. And if it's going to be fast and cheap, it's not going to be good.
right,
So,
Right.
yeah, it's very true on a lot of
brilliant.
levels.
Sure. And, it gets back to just, people just not understanding the process. And like you were saying before, everybody thinks, it's like, oh, well, I could just come down here and record this, and it'll take me, the song's 5 minutes long, so it'll take us 10 minutes, right? It's like, well, no, it's a little more involved than that.
Slightly more involved. I think education is really important when it comes to this kind of art. I think that's pretty much where our pre-production comes in, because a lot of people, it's their first time in the studio. They'll come in and they'll be like totally confused as to what the process is, let alone the terminology that you have to learn when you're in the studio.
Sure.
So I think our personal attachment to our artists and our musicians becomes really important in the process.
Very true. So you would say that you take more of a almost an artisanal approach to the process, basically.
That's correct. That's correct.
Handcrafted and
absolutely.
Yeah.
It like I was saying, like early on in the broadcast, it's like it really is about what you want to create, and it's extremely, complex art to achieve a certain view of a track, like that's kind of how, like I sort of, a lot of, and not just me, a lot of people like visualize the music, so that's why I say the view of the track, like, how is it lit, and where's the background, how far away are these objects from each other, and things like that,
Unfortunately, a lot of that's gone by the wayside. But like we said earlier, it's good that it's coming back, and it's good to see that you guys are bringing it back. And I'm hesitate to say honored to be part of the process or to be involved in it, because well, it's pretty much like everything, like you said before. We have to bring it back to the middle, and just it's good to see that people actually will care about the art, the craft, the process, the whole thing, basically. And it's not just well, come in and pay me $150 an hour, and that's all I care about is how much money I'm making this quarter. It's like we need to bring in all these musicians because we got to drum up fees and stuff, and
Right.
Right.
Which is why we keep our day jobs right now.
Right, so we can keep it affordable for a more,
Yeah.
midline band or
Sure.
low-level band even, I think there is a huge misconception about how much work it actually takes to produce anything of quality for broadcast,
Sure. Well, then, that there again lies the double-edged sword of the technology. It's like, you can buy Pro Tools, and buy a halfway decent microphone, but that doesn't make you an audio engineer. That just means,
Right.
Mommy and Daddy gave you enough money to buy some toys.
Right. I'm lucky if I know how to turn the machine on and off. Let's put it that way. I mean, I'm pretty tech savvy on my own right, but when it comes to the studio, I leave all that to Jake because I'll screw something up. I mean, it really does. There's a process involved, even just to turn on all the equipment.
Sure.
So, if people think that they can just buy all the equipment and put it together, there's no way I could buy all this equipment, put it together, and make it sound like he does.
Exactly.
You probably even know 90% of the equipment to buy.
Right. There's that too.
And there's a lot more than just the mic and the interface involved,
Absolutely. And you can only go so far on Amazon recommendations and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of websites out there with tons of debate on different types of gear and stuff, but at the end of the day, it really is about your knowledge of sound that wins. I can take a cheap microphone and make it sound amazing, or, whereas an amateur might take an expensive microphone and make it sound awful because they don't know how to point it, how close to be, what kind of room, There's so many factors that play into it, besides just the quality of the equipment, You can have a great camera, nice lens pack, but if you don't know what lens to use,
Not
forget
only
about
that, if you don't know how to light or anything like
how
that.
to light, how to use ISO and all of the exposure settings and saturation and everything.
Oh yeah, I saw it
composition.
time and time again. I worked as a session editor for a long time at a production facility, and there would be essentially trust fund babies would come in and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we got this great camera and all these great mics and all this stuff," and I was like, "Well, why does your footage look like you shot it on a Fisher Price camcorder?"
Point and go.
It's like, just because you got all the nice toys doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do anything. And then I've seen, people where they take that little Fisher Price camera and they make something that just looks amazing because,
Right.
It's great to have the tools, but nothing beats the skill and the ability to use them properly.
It's true. And
Absolutely.
that comes in handy too in the studio, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Being confident, but also being skilled at your trade,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be guitars or vocals or whatever. And the best kind of musicians and artists that we work with are the ones that are open to maybe a little bit of constructive criticism. Because sometimes what you hear on the outside is not what you're hearing on the inside. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but, as a vocalist, you hear things differently in your head.
Sure.
Because you're resonating your own head than what you hear outside. I know there's been a lot of times that I've been in the studio and I've sang a part and then I've come out to review it outside of the sound booth and been like, what the hell was that? Like, that is horrible, and being
And
able
the
to...
opposite.
Yeah.
I've stopped you from deleting multiple
Right.
awesome takes.
But knowing and stepping back as an artist and being able to take like, hey, you know what? I've heard you do that better. Let's maybe get you back in the sound booth and like feel that emotion that you felt when you wrote that piece.
Right.
Instead of just kind of going over it like a mantra in your head, I guess. After a while, it starts to drone,
Yeah, and it starts to sound like you're just repeating it over and over again.
Right.
It's like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen something. I'm like, okay, that's probably like the 17th take because they sound so.
Yeah, you just get numb to it after a while, and so being able to be open to those kinds of things also makes you a better musician in the studio.
Sure. And actually, I think, going back to, what types of tools and stuff, to having a lot of times when you don't have a lot of all the fancy bells and whistles and things, it forces you to become more creative with what you have. And you really have to kind of work at it and just be like, this is all I've got. So this is what I've got to do. And I've got to do something with it. So, here it is. And I mean, that's the last 25 years of my career, pretty much.
It's been definitely the last 8 years of our studio, You're like, oh, we've only got 10 feet of this kind of cable. How can we link it to everything? Let's try this, and this. And sometimes we've blown up equipment. We have blown up equipment before.
I've blown up amps by improperly reamping. I've destroyed microphones. You just have to learn. Like, that's just as much about being a good engineer, I think, as making tons of mistakes
And not being afraid of them either.
Yeah, and figuring out why did it sound so awful, and go back in and find your drum kit and be like, oh my God, that mic was pointing right this way, and no wonder it sounded awful, and then
It's like the artists
Or-
that paint the same thing over and over again their whole entire life.
Right.
Some people paint, I can't remember what artist it is, but he painted this like white figure and everything that he painted for his whole entire life. And somebody asked him towards the end, why did you consistently paint this white figure? And he said, well, because I would never get it right. And so, being able to repeat those and to accept your mistakes and move on and learn from them are really important, I think.
Sure. And this definitely is a kind of a comforting, nurturing environment, and where you can kind of foster or cultivate that type of end result from someone. Whereas a lot of times it's just like we're on the clock. It's come on, we got to go. The next person's coming in, and
Yeah, we are not the push them through kind of people. We've actually stopped the clock on numerous occasions. We have Atari. We have crazy stuff, puzzle games and stuff for people to vent on for a moment, because it can become a very frustrating process, especially with yourself. Not usually with the other people, but with yourself, it can become very frustrating. So there's been times where we've stopped the clock, said, let's just take a couple minutes, 15, 20 minutes, and you can clear your head, go play some Atari, do whatever you need to do.
Roll one, whatever.
Yeah, roll one, whatever you need to do.
It's Colorado. We can talk about it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
go run
we
around
can
in the
talk about
backyard. Go run around in the backyard for a minute. Whatever. But you need a snack. I got a snack. We're definitely no pressure.
Sure. And I think that eventually works its way through in the finished product. Where you can just tell where, like I said earlier, you can tell if somebody's read something 50 times because it sounds so tired when they've done it. Whereas as opposed to someone's really relaxed and they just kind of gets back to that, like we talked about earlier, that natural organic flow of things, and it just and it really shows, and that's a good thing, and that's it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Sagging is one of the culture's hottest fashion styles. Have you ever thought, when you bought and got caught by this fad, who it really benefits? Reputation and appearance play major roles in your future. Are you willing to risk and compromise that by showing your butt to the world? Don't let anything keep you from reaching your potential. Check out our website and change your life for the better. Visit pullyourpantsupnow.com to find out how you can reclaim your name. You can bag without the sag. That's pullyourpantsupnow.com.
Love All Humans is on Blog Talk Radio. That's right, you'll be speaking live with
Tracy
and Sean, and we'll be your host on Love All Humans Blog Talk Radio every Monday from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
Pacific Standard Time. Just call us at 718-766-4494 to be on the air.
That's right, www.blogtalkradio.com/loveallhumans, or go to our website, www.loveallhumans.com.
So as we wrap up, let me give you the opportunity again to shamelessly self-promote and provide all of your contact information, websites, social medias, phone numbers, emails, all that other fun stuff. Go.
All right. Well, you can get us on the web at zerocontrolrecords.com. And we will soon have a Facebook page. We've got somebody working on all of our social media. That will also be Zero Control Records on Facebook.
Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, and our YouTube channel's coming out soon.
Very cool.
All Zero Control Records, we think. I haven't checked in with that, actually.
We'll have links on the website for all of those, though.
Sure. So. And I'll put a link to your website on my Facebook page, facebook.com/@iLevel. Make sure you check that out. And as your other social media start to come online, we'll make sure that we share those links as well on there.
Fabulous.
We really appreciate that.
Well, hey, it's what we do here.
Right?
It's kind of our thing.
Scratch my back, I'll scratch you back.
Exactly.
One more promotion for the clips that we shared today. That's Bill W., Misty Walker, and Nine Callisto.
So before we wrap up, we learned a little bit about Jake's musical preferences. So what would I find on your iTunes playlist, Misty?
A lot of Leonard Cohen, Lou Reed, Depeche Mode, The Cure.
Oh, you're an 80s child like me.
I am definitely an 80s child.
Well, not just. You've been listening to a lot of Beck lately, too.
Yeah, a lot of Beck, Pink Floyd. Huge influences growing up, Pink Floyd.
Smashing Pumpkins are one of mine that I failed to mention.
Oh, cool.
Right.
One of my hugest influences.
Yeah, a lot of the older kind of alternative stuff you'll find on my iPod.
Cool. What was the first live concert you ever went to?
The first live concert I went to was Fleetwood Mac with my dad, and I think I was 11. That was an amazing show. It definitely sparked a lot in my desire to be a good live performer because they had such a great live performance.
Very cool. How about you, Jake?
My first concert was Guardian and Bleach. It was a Christian concert. Guardian and Bleach next Thursday and I can't even remember the other guys. But I went there because of Guardian. I was obsessed with Guardian when I was a kid because, like I said, I didn't get exposed to a lot of secular music. And so Guardian was as rockin' as I could get it. Petra, all of them, those classic Christian rock groups, Zayo,
Very cool. See, me, I didn't really go to see like a lot of the big name acts until I was actually into my late 20s. I think Kiss and Aerosmith at Madison Square Garden and the Meadowlands Arena in New Jersey were probably the first shows that I'd seen, but I was in my late 20s at that point. But up until then, I worked on a lot of clubs, so it was a lot of local bands and cover bands and stuff like that. And I actually managed my friend's band for a while in the late 80s and early 90s. So I was never really much into the big act scene, although I always wanted to see Kiss ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And then, when they came back for the Psycho Circus tour with the original lineup and the original makeup, I was like, all right,
that's it.
Childhood dream come true. Okay, 20 years later, I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a lot of the punk rock scene when I was growing up, too. So we did a lot of, wow, it just slipped my brain. A lot of circle jerks, that kind of stuff.
Dead Kennedys.
Dead Kennedys, yeah. Jello Biafra once the Dead Kennedys were gone. And, yeah, all the fun stuff.
Misfits.
Misfits. I've seen the Misfits, yeah. Not really my favorite, actually. I know a lot of punkers out there are like, what? But
we kind of had to like the Misfits because Glenn Danzig lived 2 towns over.
So. You were, well,
it was one of those
you
things.
kind of had to at that point in time.
It was just like, growing up in New Jersey, you had to like the Misfits, you had to like Bruce Springsteen,
Right.
I think it was a law at one point.
See, with us, it was, I grew up in the Southwest in Phoenix, and so it was like bands like Suicidal Tendencies. You had to like Suicidal Tendencies if you were a punk rocker in the 80s in Phoenix because of the, large Hispanic population there.
Right.
So
they just played recently at the Black Sheep.
And I missed it. Didn't get a chance to go, but they put on an awesome show too, still. As old as they are, they're still rocking it.
Yeah. But they started young, though. I mean,
they did.
Wasn't Mike Muir like 15 when they did their
something
first
like
album?
that, 15, 16, when they recorded their first album.
So I had remembered seeing footage of them. They were doing a record signing, and like he had his skateboard under the table.
And he was rocking it back and forth, yeah. Oh, yeah. When they used to come to Phoenix, they just used to go hang out with all the skater punks, which there weren't very many in Phoenix at that point in time.
Right.
So, we got to hang out with a lot of those guys. So.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I think the only acts that became big out of the Jersey metal scene that I had actually ever had any direct contact with, the biggest was Trickster. You remember Trickster?
No, I don't.
Yeah, they were from Paramus, New Jersey. 4 guys that went to high school together, and they started out, doing the Jersey scene, and they got signed on by who was it? Mechanic Records, I think it was, and they had a couple of videos on MTV.
Nice.
So, and then American Angel was the only other big group that we entered, but the rest of them are all now pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Didn't really go anywhere, and
yeah. I this punk rock band comes to mind. The name of the punk rock band was My Dog Popper, and it was something we used to listen to. Doing hallucinogens, hallucinogenics, when we were younger. And I looked for these records, and I called all these rare record places.
She was obsessed for a few weeks.
Yeah, I was obsessed. It took me almost a year, and then all of a sudden I was like, I can't find this album. I can't find it on tape. I can't find it on, record. I can't find it anywhere. Mm-hmm. So one day I was just like, well, shit, I'm going to look on iTunes. Holy shit. My Dog Popper has like a greatest hits album on iTunes. And I thought, this is the end of punk. It's the end of punk.
It has gone full circle, yes.
Yep.
Sid Vicious would be spinning in his grave.
That's right.
Well, it all happens that way eventually. When it's why I always try to not say the music industry, because usually whenever something becomes an industry, then that's when it just kind of
falls apart,
prostitutes itself and falls apart. Exactly, and just becomes
right. And you stop hand making all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, anyway, it's been great being here with you guys. I really enjoyed it.
It's
really
been great, actually.
It was great getting to know you guys, and hopefully the 7 or 8 people who are listening to this will check out some of your work.
Check out our stuff.
I'm kidding. It's 1,700.
Oh, really?
Divided by 2. No.
To the negative third power.
There you go. We'll make a math equation out of it somehow.
Yes. Well, like we said, music is math you listen to. So
That's right.
So, but again, yes, definitely thanks for having me down here. I look forward to doing some more stuff with you guys in the future, and hopefully we can have some of the acts that you're working with come on the show, and we can get to know them a little bit as well, and take it from there.
That would be great, actually. I talked to a few of them this week, actually.
Awesome. Sounds like a plan, man.
Absolutely.
Any last minute things you want to plug before we go?
Keep creating, man. It's all about creation. That's why we're in this business. Just make something, anything, even if it's crap. Just make it.
Very profound, I agree. So that's life at eye level. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you. Keep on listening and tell your friends. And don't forget to check us out on Facebook. Click on facebook.com/@eyelevel and you'll find links to Zero Control Records page among quite a few others. And while you're there, make sure you like the page and leave us any questions, comments, or suggestions, or links to any stories you feel aren't getting the kind of attention they deserve from the corporate media. If you own a small business, post a link to your page, your website, or both. Filmmakers, actors, musicians, comedians, post links to your work and we'll help you get the word out. While you're there, check out the Big Papa Online, Third Eye Cinema, and Fat People Know How to Eat pages as well. If you'd like a transcript of today's show, go back to the beginning and start typing really fast. I'm Matt G, and I'll see you at Eye Level next week at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the Big Papa Network.